6, and we do have quorum. Rep. Richard Lizama should be on his way, but I would like to call this and our meeting to order. So today's meeting has a very simple agenda. I would like for us to discuss the comments received for House Bill 22-22 and House Bill 22-31. And then we will address any proposals, get that adopted, prepare the committee report so we can dispose of these two bills from our committee. The rest of the bills in our committee, we will keep them on the agenda as we get the authors involved with the suggested amendments for those bills. Okay? So can I get a motion to adopt today's agenda?
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned, it's been seconded. Any discussion? Ready? Okay. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, the agenda's been adopted. Okay, moving on. Let's with House Bill 22-22. It is up on the screen. And for the record, I do want to state that we did receive comments from MVA in support, Rhoda Municipal Council, DPW in support, no proposed. Rhoda in support, no proposed amendments. DCCA in support, no proposed amendments. We did also receive public comments during our public hearing held on Saipan, April 21st by Mr. Pete Perez. And in support, no proposed amendments. We do have a couple of proposed amendments. DLNR Secretary, Anthony Beneventi, the Department of Finance, the Indigenous Affairs Office. Dr. Isa Ariola's comment had some concerns, and the Department of Commerce, Rhoda, requested some clarification on Section 105. So we're just going to, members, any other comments that I missed? No. Okay. And so also just for the record, we did hold public hearings on Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda. Saipan on April 21st, Tinian on June 25th, and on Rhoda, May 7th. So there was a lot of opportunity for our community to comment and time given to the agencies and other stakeholders to comment. Okay, so now we have House Bill 22-22 on the screen. Authored by our good rep and NR member, Angel Damapan, including other members. A bill for an act to establish laws to regulate bioprospecting activities within the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands in order to ensure prior informed consent and equitable sharing of benefits. Okay, the floor is open for discussion. If anybody would like to begin. Recognize Rep. Angel? Yes. Yes. So we can begin with Secretary Beneventi's comment requesting that a 50% of the fees collected will be for DLNR to cover its expenses in developing the regulations and monitoring for compliance. DLNR supports this legislation and makes two recommendations. Do you see deal on ours?
Nope. So, did you email it to me? Or do you want to put it on the screen? How do you want to do that?
Yeah. Okay, let me get this folder.
If you send it to me, I can put it up on the screen.
Right. Okay. Rep Angel, do you want to discuss the proposed amendments you've been working on? While I
Yes.
share this folder with legal counsel?
Thank you, Chair. So, in view of DLNR's secretary's comments, I do want to make the amendments that are being proposed. One of them is the 50% fee for registration, and one of them is the restitution fund. So, Council, if we can go to page 4, and then at line 19 or under line 19. So line 19 would be a new subsection. Oh, that's a different line 19. Sorry. I'm based off of the scanned yeah. So that would be under your version, it would be right on top of section 105.
105.
Yeah, right there.
Oh,
So
like this is 7 here?
yes.
Okay.
So there will be a new C.
Okay.
And the new C will address the first of Secretary Benaventi's comments, which is 50% of the fee shall be deposited in a special account.
Mhm. Okay, we can language it. Do you have the precise language?
Kind of, but open for you to.
Okay, no, go ahead and give it a stab.
So
and-
50% of the fee shall be deposited in a special account to be used by the Department of Lands and Natural Resources
Uh,
for expenses incurred as a result of enforcement and compliance monitoring for any registered bioprospecting activity in the CNMI. And just for a note, Madam Chair, I know that the DLNR Secretary's comment said for expenses as a result of developing the regulations. I did not include that language in here because the regulations will already be developed by the time we start registering applicants for bioprospecting. So I think all expenses for developing the regulations would have already been spent and obligated. And so in lieu of the regulation, I inserted a result of enforcement because that's a continuous expense in enforcing this act should it become law. And council, that's just the proposed language, but I wasn't sure if we need to identify the name of the special account or is that a function of the department when it gets to that point?
we've done both. We had a nice big back and forth between customs on what the title would be and the members of the committee. So it wouldn't be a bad idea if you, Representative Demapan, have a title in mind.
I do not. Okay, let's Madam Chair, can we work on the second amendment and then because what I have is based on the Secretary's comment is 2 different funds, but we'll go into the same special account for DLNR, then we can decide what the name of that account should be.
Can you clarify? 2 different funds.
Yes, so this first part of Secretary's recommendation is
Ah,
50% of the registration fee. The
Mhm.
second part of his recommendation is to have the restitution funds rest with the department.
mm,
So there are registration fee funds and then there's restitution funds in another
Yeah.
section. And I
okay.
don't want to I don't think we should create two different special accounts. I
Yeah.
think that they should both go into a special account.
Okay.
Council, right under CNMI, a new paragraph just stating that the Secretary of DLNR is the expenditure authority.
Does that work? Is the fee established,
It's established in there, B.
yeah, is that fee pretty well clear? Is it pretty clear in your mind what we're talking about? We're talking about the fee in B that they're gonna establish?
Right. So 103 talks about regulations, and in the regulations, when promulgated, they will, I guess, formalize the name of that fee. Therefore, I don't have a reference to the name of that fee, but assuming Section 104 is registration fee, that fee pertains to registration fees. Now we can go a step further, Council, if you want to just call it registration fee.
This is the registration fee you're talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
When you talk about fee, no, collect Representative Mapan, I know that we also need to establish where it's fair that not that just come up with a fee. They need to look at how much time to put in on this particular work and so forth. And you know, so do we approve that? And once they set up the fee, would that come back for us to approve it, or they just do it on their own as they wish? That's my only concern. Thank you.
Well, I agree that, you know, there will be a structure of the fees introduced. I would like to let Rep. Angel discuss that, but in the bill, we leave that autonomy with the agency to promulgate their rules and regs, right? Yeah. So that the flexibility is there, because it's a very new industry. We don't want to tie anybody's hands or create a rigid structure that will need a new bill every time, right? Rep. Angel?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleague Richard. Yes, Madam Chair is correct that it's left with the department to promulgate. However, to address some part of your concern, is any promulgation of regulations is up for public comment and review. And I think that would be the appropriate time that if we feel it's excessive or not, that we provide that comment.
Thank you for clarification, sir.
Sure, I added.
Thank you, Rep. Lizama. Okay, members, if we take a look at the screen, we have legal counsel updating.
Rep. Demapan, so I put a the word registration in before fee. And I also did it in the B here, just to make it clear. And so B's changed by adding registration. I added the language C that you requested with the word registration. I also put in registration in the second paragraph over here. So registration fees. Okay?
That works.
okay.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes,
Council, just for clarification, so now that we've clarified where 50% of the registration fee will be deposited into, although silent, automatically the remaining 50% goes into the general fund, correct?
That's correct. If there's no other express delineation or distribution, it defaults there.
Thank you.
is that
You're
the
welcome.
intent?
Paragraph B4, the secretary expenditure authority. Since there's, under that section, there's 1, 2, 3. Shall we put the expenditure authority as 4, number 4? As number 4 or number? Or we could just leave it like that.
Let me check. So section 104 has registration and bioprospecting. It talks about promulgation of rules, a notice. B is a statement signed. C is a requirement that the persons list the locations. D is the requirement that they report the results. C is a requirement. Yeah, then 2 is before engaging and in prospecting, they shall register. A is registration involves this. 3 is registering with the division. And because 3 is talking about registering with the division or renewing registration, a person shall submit, pay. Yeah, I concur with Bono that we might want to just make this another number, like
Number 4.
like a 4. Yeah.
Okay,
The expenditure authority section.
I even think the 50%, but
Yep.
yeah,
agreed.
this
Reverend
would
Angel?
agree that this should be this
Both
one. This one
Section C and D, or
see,
C, the entirety?
definitely this one should be another number. But do you want to make this one you want to make this a 4 as well, and make this a 5? Yeah. So do you want to make this 4 and then this 5 like that?
Yeah,
Submit a registration, pay a registration. I think it's a 4, yeah. So like that. Okay. Yikes. Scary. Okay.
Madam Chair, do you want to dispose of this amendment before the next one, or,
before the next amendment?
yeah, for the restitution? It's a different section.
Well, could we just go over it all and then have a draft 1?
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So let's do that. Let's just continue with all the amendments for this bill, and then we'll adopt them all at once by adopting a draft 1 of this bill. Okay?
Where to?
So, Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes, please.
I'd like to move on to, because our line numbers are different, let's move on to section 106. And this will be a new subsection 3.
Okay.
So I'll just go ahead with my proposed language and then we can refine it, Council. New subsection 3 would be restitution funds collected shall be deposited
Okay.
In a special account to be used by DLNR.
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty much the same as the top.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else follows the same language as the top, so you can cut that out.
Okay.
And then the same line again for expenditure authority.
And I'll take out registering, right? For any registered, for any bioprospecting. That makes sense up there. Yeah. I guess we could leave registered. And then same thing for the rest of, for the
Expenditure authority.
Yeah. Is that all right?
Just a clarifying question there, Council, because the special account established in subsection 3, which is the special account for restitution funds.
We
But,
haven't established it.
well, eventually it will refer to that establishment. But my clarifying question is, the previous special account we did for registration, can that be the same special account for restitution funds? And if so, then we reference the appropriate section for registration where the account is first established.
Okay. So maybe a good idea to title this thing.
Yeah, make another section.
Or we can just say, so you want to do registration fees go into a special account and you want the restitution fees also to go to the one in the same account, right?
Yes, because they're going to be used for the same expenses.
Right. Let's come up with a working title.
Like the bioprospecting revolving fund.
Okay.
There you go. We knew you could do it.
Okay, so she's establishing a bioprospecting fund there. So then here,
No, the restitution is funds collected from violation.
Only the other 50% is going to.
For the registration.
so here we have the Secretary of DLNR shall be the expenditure authority for the restitution fees collected in the bioprospecting fund. And then over here we have shall be expenditure authority for the registration fees collected in the bioprospecting fund.
Also subsection C there, Joe?
Yeah. See?
Yeah, that'd be 4.
4, right? Yeah. And I think so this is 105, or 104 rather. And then we change it to Okay, we're good. Yep. Anything else?
Okay, let's go back up. Can we see it? And just zoom up. The first amendment for the registration fees. Okay,
So it starts off with line 7, registration fee, then line 8 through 17. Rip Angel, we good?
Secretary of Denmark.
I have nothing further, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay,
And then
and then
the-
let's go to the next. This is under section 106.
Yes, 105. Right? 105.
Go down.
Oh,
there,
106, 106, sorry.
Okay.
106.
So under section 106, we're adding another number, number 3.
Lowercase, you're collected.
Restitution funds collected to be used. Okay, Secretary of DLNR shall be the expenditure authority for the restitution fees collected. Okay, no objection, Rep. Angel? Yep.
No objection.
Okay, I'd like for us to go to page 4. It's under section 104. And okay, here, let's look at registration, beginning immediately. Okay, go down. A, notice of the state's reservation. Okay, down. Can you zoom out a little bit? Statement, okay, a statement to be signed by a person who registers. Person agrees to negotiate as described in section 105. Requirement that the person lists the locations at which the person, okay. The person reports the results within 12 months after the end of registration period. Results must identify any findings identified as being potentially valuable and state whether or not further action will be taken in regards to potentially valuable findings, okay? A requirement that the person report to DLNR of any subsequent actions taken in regards to any findings. A requirement that DLNR be advised in a timely manner of any assignment of the findings to another party. So that timely manner, I would like for us to be more specific. Yeah. So a requirement that DLNR be advised in a timely manner of any assignment of the findings to another party. So that's open for discussion. Are we thinking like 6 months or 3 months? But I would like for us to be more specific. What is a timely manner? No? Rep. Angel?
Madam Chair, thank you for that. Because the registration period is for 1 year, I think we're safer with defining timely manner at 3 months.
Okay. No objection? Yeah. Okay. How about we just scratch out timely manner and okay. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is addressing the Indigenous Affairs Office's comment. And monitoring. So when we have people coming in, right, registering, they want to go bioprospecting, will they just be going on their own? No monitoring by DLNR. Nobody following them one-on-one, right? So if you can imagine, like, scientists coming from off island, right, around the world, they want to explore our natural resources. They can go diving, they can go even up to the Northern Islands. We have a diverse set of species, ecosystems up there, right? So they're going to have to register with DLNR, pay the registration fee. They can do it for a year. But will we be monitoring them?
I think that's important. They might be putting some things in their pockets.
That's true.
Once they identify the area,
Uh-huh.
they need to report.
Yes, that is in here, that they must report the locations.
Yeah,
Rep. Angel, did you have anything to add?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think it's silent in the bill on the assumption that that would also be addressed in regulations. But if this committee feels that we need to state it specifically in the bill, then we can ask council for the appropriate language and placement.
I think we should insert it because they might think it's another loophole for them to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I think, I believe, the Department of Natural Resources should promulgate their own rules and regs in regards to monitoring things.
How about, yeah. Hmm.
We could put
I do,
here.
I always support, like, giving the agencies that flexibility, right? Empowering them to make their own. But I think some kind of monitoring to be in here, even if it's not for the entire time. Is there, let's see,
Just a thought.
yeah, like this. How about just consenting? So what section is this under, legal counsel? So under section 104. Two. Okay, so before engaging in an act of bioprospecting, a person shall register with DLNR. Subsection A registration under this act expires 12 months after issuance of the registration.
Yeah, okay.
Can you, okay. Okay, so we're proposing a person shall register with the DLNR and consent to any monitoring deemed necessary by DLNR. Rep. Angel, what do you think?
I think that's fair enough, Madam Chair, because the previous amendments offered reference expenses for compliance monitoring. So
Right,
if there's a question of manpower, we've
Right.
already provided the resource.
right. And it's not a requirement, right, in the law. They can make it a requirement in the regs on how often they monitor, if there's going to be surprise inspections during their bioprospecting activities, right? Okay,
And I think, just for the record, Madam Chair, I think it's also safe to assume that DLNR in their regulatory functions also have monitoring procedures like they do in conservation areas and other locations of within their jurisdiction. Thank you.
True. Okay. Yes.
On 103, can we maybe put in something like inclusive of monitoring? Like here. So they're going to promulgate rules and regulations necessary to carry out the intent of this act, inclusive of monitoring, like procedures. So they kind of have express authority to promulgate monitoring procedures, and there's a heads up that the regulations are going to include that. So they don't themselves question if they have that authority to monitor.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's stay on 104, section 104, 2A. Okay. So 2A, a registration under this act expires 12 months after issuance. Rep. Angel, how did you get 12 months? Yeah. Is that, like, do we want to be specific? Is there a reason why you chose 12 months?
Just for purpose of keeping it as an annual registration. Because in some cases, the bioprospecting activity will go beyond a year, and I believe they have to renew that registration if it's beyond a year.
Can we go 365 days?
What's the reason?
If they start in March, they don't get February is 28 days. So I don't want any, we started in February 28. So we only got 360 days or 363 days. You know what I mean? If they go from February 28 to February 28, they're losing out on 2 days. If there's a date issue, I don't want them to
Yeah.
have any wiggle room.
So can we do like 1 year from the date of issuance?
Sure.
Sounds shorter than 360.
Expires.
Perfect. Okay, perfect.
1 year after issuance of the registration.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's better.
Okay, so Indigenous Affairs Office, Section 4D, require 90 days.
2A. Yeah.
The turnaround period for if anything found is there are other areas that have a 12-month period. Did you want to address that, or
We're okay.
you're okay with that one? That's in section 1C, 1D.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's clear. Okay. Okay. Now let's go to section 105. There was clarification concerns. Feel like there's any clarifications needed to be made, we can address that now. Okay, section 105, reservation of economic interests, agreement to negotiate in good faith. Number one, person to engage in an act of bioprospecting in this Commonwealth is subject to the CNMI's reservation of any right it may have to an economic benefit derived from the act of bioprospecting. Okay, so the CNMI reserves the right to have reserves any right it may have to an economic benefit. Okay. Number two, a person may not engage in an act of bioprospecting in the CNMI if the person, as part of the registration required herein, does not agree in writing to negotiate in good faith with the CNMI if the CNMI asserts an economic interest described in subsection 1. Okay. Do we want to include any requirements for for not filtering, like you know how CETA was just formed? So now we have this department who can like scope out these investors? Or are we just going to allow anybody, you know?
Okay.
It's open to anyone, any individual organization. They don't have to meet any kind of requirements. What if they have a bad history of bioprospecting?
Only that we want accommodation.
Yeah. It's up to this committee.
Background check.
Yeah, like a background check. Because that was really the point of CETA, right? Being formed so that we can,
Check for business background.
right?
Madam Chair, I don't have any objections to that. I'm just trying to imagine the language for it because in this case, the activity or the registrant can be an individual, a business, a organization, a non-business organization, a non-government organization.
Right.
And I'm trying to,
Do we know if CETA has any regulations about this? Like, and we can include that in the language?
for bioprospecting,
No, just for,
for
yeah,
vetting.
vetting investors.
I'm not aware of if they have one, but maybe we can also put language into this legislation to have DLNR in their regulations include a procedure for vetting.
Right. Yeah, let's do that. Because even if it was an individual, if he or she was a felon, right? Like we need to take these things into account, right? If it was an organization that broke laws,
I know that the federal has.
so we'll go back up to the rules and regulations where we included monitoring. Section 103. Monitoring and is that what?
Good standing. Yes, Chair, but I have another suggestion for that line. Council, can we put something like 1 year after issuance, or um, language referencing revocation by the department?
Or upon its,
Or unless otherwise revoked?
reapply. Not our fault.
Well, I don't think the intention is to tie their hands, but also I think sometimes by putting the extension clause leads to proliferation of using the extension clause. So
It'll have to be reviewed.
nothing further, Madam Chair.
Just a concern about, potentially valuable could mean $1, it could be $1 million. It also could be culturally valuable and not very financially viable. But if they come across a laddie stone, we might consider that priceless, and they might consider that a rock in the middle of their potential road. So it's just a term that's not really defined valuable. So results must identify any findings identified as being potentially valuable. We could put either culturally or economically, because I'm worried a little bit about, yeah, we saw the laddie stone, but I mean, you guys got them everywhere. We'll build you another one. So if I may, I'll maybe throw it in like a um economically or culturally. Okay.
Who is going to, determine that? If it's economically or culturally valuable?
I guess DLNR.
Does
I'll
it state
throw it
there
in.
that DLNR is required?
There, I'm good now. It doesn't say. If we wanted to be really technical and really, it might be an overstretch, but there's um, every federal project has a environmental impact statement
Mhm.
and EIS, right? So I wonder if we put a cultural impact statement, and if it can possibly be done, if that's not too um, subjective, if we could, in a perfect world, we would have a cultural impact statement. We cut down these trees, or we drain that wetland. There's a not just an environmental impact, but there's a cultural impact too, possibly. But it's very difficult. I don't have the. It's not at my fingertips or tip of my tongue to articulate what that cultural impact statement would look like, or who would do it, or even if it's fair to assess.
Yes, Rep. Angel.
Um, Madam Chair, I think we might be going way ahead of this bill at this point. I mean, the part that we're amending is really the guidelines for registration. Um, the bulk of the enforcement and the monitoring really is going to rest with the promulgation of the regulations. But the questions and the concerns we're raising at this point, which are extremely valid, come at another process in the government, and that's when something's discovered, when something's going to be removed, there's a whole new regulatory process outside of bioprospecting that needs to be adhered to. And we're talking about historic and cultural. There's the Section 106 procedures that need to be met. So I think that in the event a bioprospecting activity uncovers something that will lead to greater removal or disturbance, then the other regulatory functions of the government will kick in, if I'm not mistaken, Council.
I agree with everything you said, so I'm
That-
okay with.
So none of that needs to be stated in the law, in this law.
I think other than this, because when they do report the findings, I want them to be able to report, we found a laddystone that was buried, and not just pretend they didn't see it. Because they're reporting, there's a duty to report potentially valuable findings.
Mhm.
I just wanted to say, not just economically, yeah, but
Right.
culturally and historically too. If they find a Japanese zero that's never been discovered, there's no monetary value to that. But what if we put a museum around it? Maybe then, they can report that, then we can decide later on what to do about it. But if they don't see a valuable laddystone, because they're not valuing the laddystone as culturally valuable, they're not going to put it in the report. So I think this just triggers the report, and we move on from there.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also fully support the proposed amendments that was included in the folder. Um, However, I do have one clarifying question for the council, because in the proposed amendment and in DCRM's comment, they make reference to a high tide line. But in the Department of Public Lands language, they only reference the high water mark. So I just want to clarify with council that when we incorporate the amendment of replacing high water mark to high tide line, that DPL will recognize high tide line akin to the high water mark.
Technically, I do not believe, well, I'm not an expert, but I believe that high water mark is the actual technical term as opposed to high tide line. So I would have to maybe research why they would use that terminology, if there's a technical difference. In my experience with the submerged lands cases, we would always use high water mark. I'm not familiar with the term high tide line.
So that's exactly why I'm bringing this up, council, is because high tide line is a terminology used by DCRM. But the placement of a high tide line on the shore is different from the placement of a high water mark, because you're calculating two different distances. And for all intents and purposes of this bill, really this came as a result of DPL and the AG's office uncovering the fact that DPL cannot charge rental fees for areas within the high water mark. And so I want to make sure that before we push this forward, and I'm in full support of this bill, but I want to make sure that the language does not cause a problem when enacted into law. So that's why I'm bringing that up, councilors. DCRM would know exactly how to enforce an issue with a high tide line.
DCCA?
DPL may not.
Well, see, given the fact that they actually crossed out high water mark and put in high tide line,
What is the difference? Can you guys divide this?
Yes, let me pull up DCRM's. Okay, so for the record, we have moved on to House Bill 22-31. A bill for an act to authorize the Department of Public Lands to issue licenses and use permits and charge fees for the use of public lands located within the 150 feet of the high water mark. Okay. And so right now we are talking about the difference between terminology, high water mark versus high tide line. Okay, so members, if you do pull up the comment provided for by Janice Costro, the Director of Division of Coastal Resources Management, she does touch up on this subject. Okay. So,
which one was that? So I can put it up on TV.
oh,
I see.
let's go up.
What?
It's the first one
Oh, okay.
or second one. Right there, DCRM, where your mouse is. Okay. Okay, so here it is on the screen. If you just want to scroll down, legal counsel. There, definition of high water mark. Typically, a high water mark considers the maximum rise of water over land, such as a result of a flood or highest point of storm surge. This would mean that in some of the lower lying areas of Saipan, such as San Antonio, the high water mark would be past Route 30, Beach Road, and into residential property. DCRM defines the high tide line as a mark left upon tide flats, beach, or along shore objects indicating the elevation of the intrusion of high water mark, of high water. The mark may be a line of oil or scum on along shore objects, or a more or less continuous deposit of fine shell or debris on the foreshore or berm. This mark is physical evidence of the general height reached by wave run up at recent high waters. DCRM conducts biannual beach profile surveys to collect data on beach erosion and accretion to measure shoreline gains and losses. To date, DCRM has observed that Saipan shorelines mimic the ebbs and flows of the natural movement of our waters. However, drastic changes have been observed post-storm events. This poses the question of whether or not DPL will map the high tide line to use for its permitting process, or if they will rely on manual measurements on a case-by-case basis. DCRM suggests the term high water mark be replaced with high tide line. The definition of high tide line shall be interpreted to ensure consistency with coastal resource management regulations governing activities within 150 feet inland of the high tide line. Okay. I guess my first question is, about it's really what you brought up, Rep. Angel, and whether or not high water mark is widely used in the Department of Public Lands in all of their other regulations.
So watermark is basically general.
It goes up to residential area. High water mark
I think they have been using different definitions
changes.
because there are surveyors who say that this term is used interchangeably here in the CNMI, which was something clarified. Yes?
And Chair, I don't object to the use of high tide line. I just want to make sure that it's enforceable and
Mhm,
that
I agree.
the high tide line provision would give DPL authority to regulate the same property area that is determined by high water mark. So if it's interchangeable, then I have no objection to the use of high tide line. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
that enforceability is one and the same.
Right. I agree. Is there any way we can confirm that, legal counsel?
We could always say to the high water mark or the high tide line, whichever is more inland or whichever is greater.
Or we can have a section and definition defining the high water mark as the high tide line. I mean, because the contention here from DCRM is high water mark is not defined. So they said, well, we define high tide line as this.
So use our definition.
DPL is silent on whether that definition is one and the same.
I was going with your first statement that you wanted them to have the most regulation, the most jurisdiction, right? So I was just gonna say the high water mark or the high tide line, whichever is actually more greater, whichever one is more inland, because it's gonna differ. In San Antonio, it will differ than in Garapan, probably.
I have no objection to that.
I'm hesitant to make high tide line the same thing as high water because we're being taught, or I'm learning that there's a difference,
Right.
and I know for sure that high water mark is the traditional term. That's what's in the law. High tide line, quite frankly, is new. It's new to me, right? This didn't exist when I was doing the submerged lands case in 2002. It wasn't the terminology that we were using with the federal government either. It was all high water mark, high water mark, high water mark. So high tide line might be a term that's actually defined nowadays. So let's use it and say whichever one is more it's either the high water mark or the high tide line, whichever is more. So we can use both terms since one is defined high tide line and the other one is maybe less defined but actually more prevalent.
Whichever is more what?
Well, the one that's more commonly used is high water mark.
Yeah.
That's in everyone's vocabulary.
Right.
But the one that's actually technically defined by the regulations 15-10 is high tide line. So we have a more, but if you look at the definition of high water mark, it's in the law somewhere because that's how DPL and DLNR divide their turf up.
So do we use the one that's in the law or the one that was made up by
We're in the regs.
coastal resource?
Mhm.
I was suggesting we use both because Rep. Demapon's concern is that we give them as much jurisdiction as possible. So I can language it where it's up to the high tide line or to the high water mark, whichever is more inland.
Well, let's go back to the proposed amendments. And if you go down, many of the concerns brought to my attention was the type of permit that would be issued, right? And a lot of people are thinking that DPL will be granting permits to those who want to construct within 150 feet of the high water mark. But this is actually to grandfather existing construction. So, for example, Oliai Beach Bar, World Resort, Triple J's. Yep. So they've already built. So the clarification is offered here in the amendment to be called encroachment permits. Right. And so I bring this up because if we use the term high tide line or high water mark and we now extend it into Beach Road, like what CRM was suggesting, DPL can issue encroachment permits to everybody all the way extending into residential areas, right? And I guess the authority will be there, but whether or not they exercise it is up to DPL. But that's where it will impact DPL's authority, right? And right, as the years go on, the mark is going to change. It's going to keep going in, of course. We'll just,
That 150 mark, right?
yeah. I mean, if you look at other places, some of them are just turning all beachside into public lands, selling it. But
So this encroachment permit is only for businesses? I'm just thinking of
mhm.
those people in San Antonio, the residential.
This is only for public land, so not for private lands.
Ah,
So it's only for public lands. And right now, DPL cannot charge any kind of fee for people, those using public lands within 150 feet.
Because DLNR is claiming it, right?
No? Well, what is
Someone
because
has to claim it.
DLNR is claiming it? DLNR did provide comment.
The businesses were saying, oh, the watermark was.
DLNR shouldn't have any authority for
public land.
public land outside of the water.
Yeah.
So it really is an authority of the rest of DPL. And really, if you look at Amendment 3, like what the chair said, is we're addressing the existing encroachment. So I was just trying to clarify, council, if the use of high tide line is fine. And if that is, then I'm ready to proceed.
Well, and is it defined somewhere?
It is defined.
Can we pull that up? Bono, is that the thing you can look up while we?
They cited in their comments, Joe, at the bottom, I think.
Yeah.
They cited it in their own comments.
I would like to.
Yeah. if you look at,
So the high water mark
Where
is
was
not,
that?
I would like to see the official like definition. And time check, it's 11:49. That's what that was.
so in their comment, where is that?
2231, the first.
There's a footnote.
Uh-huh.
So there it is right there.
Okay.
15-10-20 definition of high tide line.
Okay.
Northern Marianas Administrative Code. So we'll take a picture of that.
Well, that's definition of high tide line. How
Yeah.
about high water mark?
High water mark it's got to be in there somewhere because we've been using it for 30 years.
Okay, so let's look up. So Bono's doing high water mark,
Yeah, Bono, you're doing that right.
and legal counsel's gonna look up the high tide line.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that's what you were doing already. Oh, here, I got it.
Can you tell me what that citation was again? Title 15, right?
My bad. That is 15-10-20.
Dash 20.
Yeah, 020. Definitions there. Up. Oh, got it.
Yeah. 20.
Um,
So
L,
L. No, it's author.
L, L.
LL.
LL.
High tide line means a line or mark left upon the tide flats, beach or along shore.
Okay, members, so the official definition of the high tide line means a line or mark left upon tide flats, beach, or along shore objects indicating the elevation of the intrusion of high water. The mark may be a line of oil or scum on along shore objects or a more or less continuous deposit of fine shell or debris on the foreshore or berm. This mark is physical evidence of the general height reached by wave run-up at recent high waters. Will the definition of high water mark be a part of this definition code?
So, as I understand it, they're asserting that the high tide line is closer to the water than the high water mark, especially during a storm. So,
I
yeah,
agree.
that's what they're asserting. Let me see if we can. Bono, did you find it?
Is that a definition in the law?
High water mark.
The high tide line.
Yes, it's the admin code.
Guideline is in the law.
And
High tide line is in the code. Yes, it's in the Title 15 BECQ, their own regs.
so it's their own regs.
Yeah, it's in the admin code, Commonwealth Code. So in the Commonwealth Code, natural resources, land resources, public land.
None for high water mark
None
so far at the natural.
under public land?
So public lands, let's see,
Defined.
it's going to say something to the high water mark. 2 CMC 1201. You know, actually, I'm with Rep. Angel with ready to vote because high tide line would actually be closer to the water.
Mhm.
Two CMC. 2 CMC.
I guess my concern is changing that language in this law, right? To mirror an administrative code that's in regulation versus law. Versus do we have an official definition of the high watermark? Because otherwise we should keep it as is. Like
The only
high
thing that
water
concerns me, Chair, is
Uh,
the definition of the high tide line doesn't belong to DPL.
Right.
But the issue we have in this bill is for DPL.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
They have to promulgate another regulation.
Right.
1201. 1201.
Won't say,
It doesn't say it either.
or Title II, Division 1. Under submerged lands.
It doesn't say it, right?
No, it doesn't say. All it says is submerged lands, so up above
Oh, dude.
high water mark.
How about we go to the code that we're amending?
There's high water mark at the gate. There. What is that?
All lands below the ordinary high water mark extending seaward to the outer limit of the exclusive economic zone established.
Submerged lands. Oh. But high water marks.
Yeah, still doesn't define what the high water mark is. So
How about go down? Was that water dependent use? How about in the code we're actually amending, 1 CMC section 2806?
2806.
So now we'll go to where the amendment is actually being,
2806.
yes, 2806E.
Where is that?
DPL? There, 14, chapter 14.
Chapter 14.
Chapter 14.
Oh, goodness.
There you go. Fundamental policies.
E.
Mm,
Yep, high water mark.
So this is the part of the code, the law where we're making amendments. This bill 2231 is making the amendment
Yeah,
under subsection E to
yeah.
add in.
Yes, so I see what, so DPL's language is high water mark, right?
Mhm.
That's the language they speak. Then you have BECQ that says we have a technical term that's high tide line that's more specific, and it's actually defined by our regs. So we have BECQ telling the law what the definition should be, and it's like
Bono, can you look if in DPL's regulations, it's
defined.
defined in their regulations?
Sure.
Like CRM? Yes?
High water mark is also defined in the dictionary. So I think that's why it's not expressly defined as a separate definition here, but they're making references
Uh-huh.
to the high water mark all over in the laws of
What would
DPL
it-
and the regulations. But
Yeah,
the difference between the high water mark really is the high water mark is marked by where the flood reaches, not where the tide reaches.
Yeah.
So it was high water mark was really referenced in all these regs and the laws of DPL to help developers know where to build outside of the
Mm.
flooding areas.
Mm,
The high tide line is really saying, oh, the wave reaches here. So it may not even be the same area that
mm-hmm.
we're trying to
Address.
address in this bill with encroachment.
Just
Because-
leave it at high water mark.
Yeah, I mean, I just went through all the high watermark references and then looked up the actual definition, and it doesn't even refer to the tide. It's the
Yeah,
flood.
right. Where did you find that? How do you, where were you searching in the code?
No, in all of the codes and
Yeah.
in the regulation, they reference the high water from the high watermark to this point.
Yeah, no, I just wanted
No
to know if
one
you have a better,
defines
wanted to know if you have a better search engine than me.
No, there's no definition of it, so we revert
You
to
just
where all the
Google-
other words are defined, and it's in the dictionary, and
Okay.
it talks about
Yeah.
flood zones and
Yeah.
flood lines,
Yeah,
and makes no mention over tide.
right.
Mm.
And if we go back to our original bill, which is, what's our original bill? What are we trying to do here?
And so if we go back to the original bill, we're trying to allow DPL to issue licenses and use permits and charge fees for the use of public lands located within the 150-foot.
Of the
High
high
water
water mark. I think we keep it. With all due respect to BCQ.
And Madam Chair is absolutely right in her earlier comment that there really is only one intent of this bill, and is to address the existing encroachments.
Yeah.
And so the existing encroachments really have nothing to do with high tide lines. And no other part of this bill is going to deal with any future use of high tide lines or high water mark.
Yeah, right. Okay, let's go back to the, so this is the bill. Let's go back to the proposed amendments. Okay, members, anything else? Any other discussion before, let's just pull up the,
Okay, so we're good with high water mark? Or
go up
I thought it was.
we
no,
wanna
it's-
make
there. It has all the red. Go down, down, down. It has all the red. Down, 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 there. Okay. Okay, let's start with E. If you can scroll up real quick. Except as provided in the subsections below, the department may not transfer an interest and may prohibit the erection of any permanent structure in public lands located within 150 feet of the high water mark of a sandy beach. Of a sandy beach, is it?
Mhm.
So still, DPL may not transfer an interest and may prohibit the erection of any permanent structure. So again, to clarify, this is just to address the encroachment issue. So let's keep the high water mark because we want to keep the language consistent for DPL, right? This is DPL regs. We want to keep the language consistent for DPL, okay? Legal counsel, do you want to just use this for now?
This language?
I mean, this document, just to remove, or do you want to copy and paste it into?
Yeah, I can copy and paste. If we're gonna go with this.
Yeah. We'll go off of and compare it next to the, yeah. So legal counsel is just going to paste it here so we can take a look at both of them. Okay, so we'll keep high water mark.
Yep. It's a potato, you know.
Yeah,
This is the original language. The department may not transfer an interest and may prohibit the erection of any permit in public lands located within 150, except that they may authorize the construction of facilities, and they may grant a non-exclusive license or permit that does not interfere with the public access. I don't know, I have to reread the findings, but we're looking at licenses within 150 feet.
Well, Council, if you look further on the amendments, that part of the language for non-exclusive license is being removed
Mhm.
so that we just talk about encroachment permits.
Yeah, so scroll down.
On Sean Frank's, these BCQs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Authorized construction versus encroachment permits.
If you're okay with the BCQ language, I can clean it up and we can look at it.
Yeah.
We can look at it without
Having to.
having both, yeah, so.
Yep.
I'll make this a substitute, right, so. So then I can just clean it up. Just put it down here so we can see it.
Okay.
Just my glass.
Oh, okay. You are excused, Rep. Nicholas.
Or that's calling already.
Okay,
We're almost close.
we're almost done, members.
Okay, so that's basically what it's gonna look like.
Okay, let's take a look. I do have,
The new E,
except as provided in the subsections below. The department may not transfer an interest and may prohibit the erection of any permanent structure in public lands located within one of the high water mark. Always Sandy Beach. So now, this is E1, right? The department may we can begin number one with the department may, right? Except that, okay. Except that the department may authorize the construction of facilities for public purposes, okay?
Actually, we can do the start as provided by the subsections below. Better not, because it might be, okay. It's E, yeah,
Okay,
so
except
Yeah.
that, okay.
they grant encroachment permits.
Encroachment permits, provided the use does not interfere with the public's access to the public lands, okay?
Yeah,
And number three, encroachment permits may be issued to persons who have a legal interest in adjoining property and who are currently maintaining an encroaching structure, improvement, or other item in exchange for a fee. The encroachment must have been in place prior to the effective date of this legislation. Any such permit may have a term of up to 5 years and may be renewed at the discretion of the department. The annual fee for any such permit shall not be greater than 4% of the fair market value of the public land on which the structure, improvement, or other item sits. If the department issued permits for encroachments prior to the effective date of this amendment, such prior permits and the consideration paid for such prior permits are ratified and deemed sufficient. The department may promulgate regulations consistent with this provision. My only concern is the 4%.
okay.
Is that necessary? Is that something we,
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
no problem. Have a good appointment.
Thank you so much.
So I was told 4% was chosen because that's what they're currently paying or what they paid before. Currently, they cannot assess any fee, but before, that's what was paid. So I, again, just like to err on the side of flexibility for the department. Not sure if this is something that we would like to have in the law itself or allow the department to regulate.
Chair.
Yes?
Council, do we know if this is the standard rate for other public land negotiations? I've seen the figure in some proposed leases and some active leases, so I don't know. I'm just wondering whether DPO has a scale for their rates or how that's determined.
Yeah. Good question. Let's take a short recess. We also do recognize that the Department of Public Lands was not present at this meeting to provide comment on the 1% and 4% permit limitations. So we will, as chair, I'll ensure that this is shared with the acting secretary, Sixto Exomar, and we will request for comments from the acting secretary before our tentative House session. Okay? But we now have House Bill 22-31, Substitute 1, on the floor for adoption. Can I get a motion?
Second,
There's been a motion. It's been seconded. Discussion on that motion?
ready?
Okay, ready? All those in favor of adopting House Bill 22-31, Substitute 1, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. It has been adopted. Okay, thank you, members. Moving on with our agenda. Any miscellaneous? Okay, so then the rest of the bills in our committee do have substantial proposed amendments and comments from agencies and stakeholders. And if we were to go through each of that, like what we just did, it would not be timely. So I will be sharing the comments received for those three bills with the authors to request for a draft that addresses those concerns and comments, and then we will schedule our next meeting. Okay? But we have given stakeholders and the public enough time to comment, and now it is up to the author and the committee to proceed. Okay? So that is the status of the remaining bills in our committee. Any other miscellaneous items? No? Let's see. So former Senator Sixto Exomar is completing his confirmation hearings. It looks like he will be our next Secretary of Department of Public Lands, and I would like for this committee to meet with him so that we can just discuss his priorities for the department and build on the relationship that we have with DPL. So that will be forthcoming as well. Our committee is still planning the trip to the Northern Islands. So the boat is on dry dock at this time. And yes, this is being recorded.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know we were going to the grounds.
so the committee is still on for that. Let's see. We have been given a tentative date of the first week of August. Okay, so first week of August, and just let me know. The committee is priority for this trip. The boat that we will be using is the, goodness, it is slipping my mind. Anyway, if the members would like, I can request for a tour of the boat, just so you have an idea of the kind of accommodations that are available, because it is a long trip. Yes, it's about 15 hours one way, and it's not the most comfortable ride, right? So if you'd like to take a look at the boat, I'll make a request to see if we can at least take a tour or share some photos of the accommodations. Okay, any questions with that?
I never
Yes.
had a chance to be on a boat for, what is it, more than 8 hours?
16 hours? Yes, this committee will try its best to make it as comfortable as possible, okay?
Because I did super, one time I went
Yes.
to Florida, oh my gosh, I was thrown up. So I'm afraid that
Yeah.
one trip would do that to me again.
Right,
That's another
valid.
thing is, can we reduce the days, number of days, at least, we talk about 5 days?
5 days total, including the travel. So it's 30 hours of travel just for there and back,
A day, almost a day, and
Um,
6 hours, yeah.
and recovery and touring of the sites, right?
I guess gonna take.
So it'll probably come down to maybe 2 or 3 days on the island of Pagan. Yeah.
We spend most of our time there.
Yes, we will be stopping by Alamagan. Be there for a few hours. But I will get a schedule to the committee as soon as me and the other stakeholders create one. Okay, anything else under miscellaneous? Okay, members, so thank you very much for today. I'm so happy that we have disposed of two bills. Legislative Assistant Bono will let us know when it's ready, and we will circulate that for your signature or have it at the clerk's office awaiting your signature. Okay? All right, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Second.
There's been a motion for adjournment. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Thank you, members.
So, you think it's gonna be the first week of August?
Yeah, we think so.
I'm so excited, Bano. Are you excited?
After tonight,
So excited.